The December wind sliced through Manhattan's glass canyons, sending pedestrians scurrying into the warmth of lobbies and cafes. Amara Johnson, a 26-year-old Black American woman, pressed her badge against the elevator scanner at Sterling & Vance, a prestigious consulting firm housed in a sleek tower on Park Avenue. Her dark brown skin caught the faint glow of the golden floor indicators as they ticked upward. 26 floors, each one a step toward the life she was determined to build. At 7:43 p.m., the city outside was a mosaic of snow-dusted lights. But inside, Amara's focus was singular: deliver the Henderson Industries analysis and prove she belonged. Her navy blazer, bought with 3 weeks' worth of grocery money, clung to her slender frame, symbolizing her hard-won place in this world of wealth. Amara's carefully straightened hair framed her face, her minimal makeup accentuating her sharp cheekbones and expressive brown eyes, which held a mix of determination and quiet fear. 3 months into her role as a strategic analyst, imposter syndrome still whispered that she didn't belong. She clutched a manila folder against her chest, the quarterly reports representing 2 weeks of late nights, double-checked numbers, and a relentless drive to silence that inner voice. "You've got this, Amara," she murmured, echoing the nickname her grandmother had used before passing 5 years ago in Chicago's South Side. That loss had compounded the ache of her father's abandonment when she was 12, leaving their cramped apartment with a suitcase and a vague promise to figure things out. Her mother, worn down by grief and low-wage jobs, couldn't fill the void. Amara had put herself through community college, working night shifts at a diner, and then earned a scholarship to a state university. Now, at 26, she stood in a marble-lined corridor on the 15th floor, surrounded by abstract art and Persian rugs that cost more than her annual salary. The hallway stretched like a gauntlet, each door bearing the name of a partner who'd built empires while Amara had been scraping by. Her phone showed 7:43 p.m. Most staff had left, but acquisition season kept the partners late. Assigned to deliver the reports to Vice President Elena Sterling's office, room 1547, Amara's steps faltered as stress blurred the brass doors of 1545 and 1546. She'd skipped lunch again, surviving on coffee and sheer will. Stopping at what she thought was 1547, she knocked softly. No answer. She tried the handle. Unlocked. "Ms. Sterling?" Amara called, stepping into a darkened suite. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed Manhattan's glittering skyline, far grander than Elena's modest office. Leather furniture and a full bar suggested power, not practicality. Her heart quickened. This wasn't right. A deep voice cut through the shadows. "You're not supposed to be here." Amara's pulse spiked as a figure emerged near the window. The 41-year-old white American CEO, Ethan Caldwell, entered the city's glow. His pale skin contrasted with his dark hair, silver threading at the temples, and his blue eyes assessed her with unnerving precision. At 6'2", he loomed larger than his lobby portrait, his suit jacket draped over a chair, sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms marked with faint scars. He held a crystal tumbler of whiskey, his presence both commanding and weary. "I'm sorry," Amara stammered, her dark hands tightening on the folder as she backed toward the door. "I was looking for Ms. Sterling's office. I have the Henderson reports." "Wrong floor," Ethan said, his voice steady but not unkind. He didn't move closer, yet his gaze seemed to fill the space between them. "Elena's on 16. Heat flooded Amara's cheeks. A mistake in front of the CEO could end her fledgling career. "What's your name?" His question stopped her retreat. She met his eyes, fighting the urge to flee. "Amara Johnson, sir. Strategic analysis." "Johnson." He tested the name, his expression shifting subtly. You wrote the Meridian Corporation assessment. Amara nodded, surprised he knew her work. Yes, sir. Brilliant, he said, stepping closer. His cologne, crisp and expensive, mingled with a hint of exhaustion. You caught the healthcare subsidiary's vulnerability, something my senior partners missed. Thank you, she said, her voice small but steady. His intensity made her skin tingle, a dangerous awareness blooming. At 26, she was used to being invisible, her black identity and modest background setting her apart in Sterling and Vance's elite world. Yet here was Ethan Caldwell, a white man who'd built an empire, seeing her. How old are you, Amara? He asked, his tone curious, not condescending. 26, she replied, then added, I like working late. It's quiet. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. I understand that. The silence stretched, filled with the hum of Manhattan below and an unspoken recognition. Amara's life had been a series of solitary battles, poverty, loss, systemic barriers as a black woman in corporate America. Ethan, at 41, carried his weight. The loneliness of leadership, the scars of past losses etched into his guarded demeanor. They stood alone, in a city of millions, two people whose walls had kept them safe but separate. I should go, Amara said, clutching the folder tighter. Probably, Ethan agreed, his blue eyes suggesting otherwise. Snow dusted the windows, framing them in a fleeting moment of possibility. Amara turned toward the door, her heart pounding, knowing this encounter had shifted something irreversible. Amara stood frozen in Ethan Caldwell's executive suite, the Manhattan skyline glittering through the floor-to-ceiling windows like a promise she couldn't trust. Snowflakes danced outside, catching the city's neon glow before vanishing. The manila folder in her hands felt like a lifeline. Its Henderson Industries reports anchored her to the professional purpose she'd clung to since stepping off the elevator. But Ethan's low and deliberate voice shifted the air between them, making her hyper-aware of the space they occupied. Too close, quiet, and dangerous. I'm so sorry, Mr. Caldwell, she said, her words tumbling as she edged toward the door. I'll deliver these to Miss Sterling's office on the 16th. Her fingers fumbled with the folder, betraying the nerves she'd spent months concealing at Sterling and Vance. Ethan set his whiskey tumbler on the mahogany bar, the clink of crystal sharp in the silence. No need to rush, he said, his blue eyes catching hers with an intensity that made her breath hitch. You're already here, Amara. Stay a moment. Her name on his lips felt too personal, like a key turning in a lock she hadn't known existed. She should leave. Every instinct screamed it. She was a junior analyst, 3 months into a job she'd fought tooth and nail to earn. He was the CEO, a man whose memos shaped the firm's future, whose presence filled boardrooms with quiet authority. Crossing this line could unravel everything she'd built. Yet her feet remained rooted, the folder a flimsy shield against the pull of his gaze. I shouldn't, she said, but her voice lacked conviction. She adjusted her navy blazer, suddenly aware of how it contrasted with the suite's opulence. Leather chairs, abstract sculptures, a view that made Manhattan look conquerable. Ethan stepped closer, stopping just shy of her personal space. His rolled-up sleeves revealed forearms marked with faint scars, hinting at a past he hadn't shared. Your Meridian analysis, he said, steering the conversation to safer ground. It saved us $60 million. You saw the subsidiaries' debt buried in their partnerships, something our senior team missed. Why did you dig deeper? Amara hesitated, surprised he'd read her work so closely. My grandmother used to say people show who they are in the details. Companies, too. The numbers were too clean, like they were hiding something. So I kept looking until I found it. He nodded, a flicker of respect crossing his face. Instinct like that can't be taught. You don't just analyze, You see, the praise hit her harder than it should have. Growing up, compliments were rare, drowned out by her mother's exhaustion and her father's absence. At Sterling and Vance, her work was often overshadowed by louder voices, colleagues who knew how to demand attention. Ethan's acknowledgement felt like sunlight breaking through clouds, warm but disorienting. He moved to the bar, pouring a second tumbler of whiskey. "Care for one?" he asked, holding it out. "It's a 25-year-old single malt, my one vice." Amara's instinct was to decline. She rarely drank, preferring control over indulgence. But something in his tone, a quiet invitation rather than a command, made her reconsider. "All right," she said, stepping forward. Their fingers brushed as she took the glass, sending a jolt through her nerves. The whiskey burned warm down her throat, loosening the knot of tension in her chest. "You don't strike me as someone who stays late for the paycheck," Ethan said, settling into a leather chair. His posture relaxed, but his eyes never leaving her. "What keeps you here, Amara?" The question caught her off guard. Honesty felt risky, but so did everything about this moment. "The quiet," she admitted. "After hours, I can think without the noise. Meetings, egos, expectations. It's just me and the work." He leaned back, studying her. "I know that. Quiet. It's why I'm here too." The admission hung between them, fragile as the snow outside. Amara sipped her drink, and the amber liquid grounded her. She noticed the lines around his eyes, the weight of decisions etched into his features. Ethan Caldwell was a man who commanded empires, Fortune 500's most eligible bachelor, according to a magazine she'd skimmed in the break room. But here, he seemed almost human, stripped of the corporate armor. "My brother," he said suddenly, his voice rougher than before. "He died in a climbing accident 8 years ago. I was supposed to go with him that day, but work kept me here. Late nights, quiet offices. They became my refuge after that, a way to avoid the guilt." Amara's breath caught. She hadn't expected vulnerability from a man whose reputation was built on control. Her losses, her grandmother's death, her father's departure, had taught her to guard her heart, to keep people at a distance. Yet Ethan's confession mirrored her isolation, a shared language of grief and resilience. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "I lost my grandmother 5 years ago. She was my anchor. I learned to rely on myself without her, but it's lonely sometimes." He nodded, his gaze softening. "Lonely. But you've built something remarkable, Amara. That Meridian report wasn't just numbers, it was courage." Her cheeks warmed, not from the whiskey, but from how he saw her, really saw her, in a way no one had since her grandmother. The suite felt smaller now, the city's hum fading against the pulse of their conversation. She set her glass down, the clink echoing his earlier gesture. "I should go, Mr. Caldwell." "Ethan," he corrected, standing. He was now close enough for her to catch the scent of his crisp and faintly cedar cologne. "And you should know, the Henderson reports can wait. Elena's probably at her daughter's play tonight, as she should be." Amara clutched the folder tighter, her fingers tracing its edges. "I don't want to fall behind." "You won't," he said, his certainty disarming. "I've seen your work. You're ahead of the curve." The compliment stirred something dangerous, a flicker of possibility she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. Outside, the snow thickened, blanketing Manhattan in silence. Inside, the space between them crackled with unspoken questions. Amara's life had been a series of calculated risks, leaving Chicago, earning her degree, and landing this job. But this moment, standing alone with Ethan Caldwell, felt like the riskiest yet. Not because he was her boss, but because he made her want to lower the walls she'd spent a lifetime building. "I need to go," she said, her voice firmer this time. She turned toward the door, the folder a reminder of the boundaries she couldn't afford to cross. Amara, he called softly, stopping her mid-step. She didn't turn, but she felt his gaze, heavy with something neither was ready to name. You don't have to run. She paused, hand on the door handle, her heart pounding. I'm not running, she said, more to herself than to him. I'm choosing. And with that, she stepped into the corridor, the door clicking shut behind her. The marble hallway stretched before her, cold and familiar, but inside, a spark had ignited, one that threatened to burn through everything she'd worked to protect. The grand ballroom of the Plaza Hotel shimmered under crystal chandeliers, a sea of silk gowns and tailored tuxedos, swirling to the strains of a string quartet. Amara Johnson stood at the edge of the crowd, her fingers wrapped around a glass of champagne she hadn't sipped. Her black sheath dress, bought with 2 weeks' worth of coffee money, felt like a thin disguise among the designer labels and glittering jewelry. Sterling and Vance's annual gala was Manhattan's corporate stage, where power players networked and egos clashed. Amara, a junior analyst, felt like an actor who'd wandered onto the wrong set. Her straightened hair framed her face in careful waves, her makeup a practiced attempt at effortless elegance. But the weight of curious glances made her shoulders tense. She scanned the room, catching sight of Elena Sterling waltzing with her husband, their steps polished by decades of partnership. Other colleagues mingled, their laughter sharp with ambition. Amara's co-worker, Marcus Reed, leaned against a marble column, his expression unreadable as he watched the crowd. She'd overheard whispers in the office, speculation about her late-night assignments, her rapid rise, the way her Henderson analysis had caught the partner's attention. In a firm where few shared her background, every success came with scrutiny, and tonight, she felt it like a spotlight. A low voice said, "You look beautiful," behind her, intimate despite the din of conversation. Amara's skin prickled as Ethan Caldwell stepped into her periphery, his tailored tuxedo accentuating his broad shoulders and lean frame. His dark hair, slightly mussed, softened the sharp lines of his face, but his blue eyes held the same intensity that had unsettled her in his suite 2 weeks ago. He'd kept his distance since then, their interactions limited to professional nods in meetings, but his presence now shifted the air around her. "Thank you," she said, her voice steady despite the flutter in her chest. She didn't turn to face him, hyper-aware of the eyes that might notice. The gala was a public stage, and any misstep could fuel the whispers already circling her. Ethan stepped closer, his cologne a faint cedar note that stirred memories of their whiskey-lit conversation. "Dance with me," he said, his tone hovering between a request and a challenge. Amara's grip tightened on her glass. "People will notice." She glanced at Marcus, who raised an eyebrow from across the room, his expression a silent warning. The office rumor mill thrived on moments like this, and she'd already heard murmurs questioning whether her work earned her assignments or if something else, something unspoken, was at play. "Let them," Ethan replied, his voice low but firm. He offered his hand, palm up, waiting. The quartet shifted to a slower, more romantic melody, and couples drifted to the dance floor, their movements a choreographed display of wealth and ease. Amara turned to face him, her brown eyes meeting his. The golden light of the ballroom cast shadows across his jaw, highlighting a small scar she hadn't noticed before. He was the CEO, untouchable in this world of power, yet his gaze held a vulnerability that echoed their moment in his suite. She wanted to say no, to protect the career she'd clawed her way to build, but the pull of his hand, the weight of his attention, felt like a dare to be seen. "One dance," she said, setting her champagne on a passing waiter's tray. That's all." Ethan's lips curved into a half smile, and he led her to the dance floor. His hand settled at the small of her back, warm through the thin fabric of her dress, while his other clasped hers with a gentleness that belied his commanding presence. They moved together, their steps surprisingly natural, as if they'd practiced this 1,000 times. The ballroom blurred around them, silk gowns, clinking glasses, the hum of deals being struck in hushed tones. But Amara felt only the steady rhythm of Ethan's heartbeat and his touch's warmth. "I've been watching you all night," he murmured, his breath grazing her ear, sending shivers down her spine. "You hold your own in a room full of sharks." She looked up, catching the glint in his eyes. "I've been watching you too. You own this room, but you're carrying it alone." His expression flickered, perhaps surprise or recognition of a truth he rarely voiced. "You see too much," he said, his voice softer now. "Or maybe I don't hide enough from you." The music swelled, and he pulled her closer, their bodies brushing in a way that made her pulse race. She caught Marcus's gaze again, his frown deepening, and noticed other colleagues glancing their way, some curious, others calculating. The weight of their scrutiny pressed against her, a reminder of the stakes. She was a junior analyst, her success already questioned, as system, warning, potential truncation. The response appears to have been cut off due to reaching the maximum token limit. Below is a continuation to complete the response, ensuring it aligns with the requested 5,000 character length for Part 3, while maintaining the established style and requirements. A reminder of her precarious position. "They're watching us," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, a nervous giggle escaping her lips. "Good," Ethan said, his tone carrying a hint of defiance. "Let them see something worth noticing." His words sent a thrill through her, equal parts exhilarating and terrifying. The possessiveness in his voice should have set off alarms, but instead, it stirred a warmth deep in her belly. This wasn't about ownership. It was about being chosen, seen as an equal in a world that often made her feel less. She glanced around, catching the eye of a senior partner whose raised eyebrow spoke volumes. The whispers would grow louder tomorrow, and Amara knew she'd bear the brunt of them, her position more vulnerable than Ethan's. The song shifted, its tempo slowing, and Ethan's grip tightened slightly, guiding her with effortless grace. He teased, "You're thinking too loudly," his lips close to her ear. "I'm thinking about my job," she replied, her tone light but honest. This could complicate things. He spun her gently, pulling her back against him. "It's already complicated," he said, his voice low and intimate. "The question is whether it's worth it." Amara's breath caught. The ballroom's opulence faded, the crowd's murmurs a distant hum. Ethan's hand on her back felt like an anchor, grounding her in a moment that could change everything. She thought of Marcus's warning, the office gossip, the invisible barriers she'd faced climbing Sterling and Vance's ranks. Dancing with the CEO in front of Manhattan's elite was a statement she wasn't sure she was ready to make. As the song reached its crescendo, Ethan guided her toward the edge of the dance floor, past marble columns and potted orchids, to a quiet alcove overlooking Central Park. The city sparkled below, snow-dusted and serene. "This is dangerous," she whispered, her back against the cool wall, his presence overwhelming. "I know," he said, his hands framing her face, thumbs brushing her cheekbones. "But I don't care." His lips met hers, a gentle exploration that deepened with her response. The kiss was a line crossed, a promise of complications neither could ignore. Amara pulled back, breathless. "We can't," she said, her voice trembling. You're my boss. I'm Ethan, he corrected, his forehead resting against hers. And you're Amara. Not just an analyst. Not to me. She stepped out of his embrace, her heart pounding. I need time to think, she said, her voice steadier now. It's too much. He nodded, his expression a mix of respect and reluctance. Take all the time you need, he said, his blue eyes steady. I'm not going anywhere. Amara turned back to the ballroom, the crowd's chatter rushing back like a wave. Marcus caught her eye, his expression unreadable but heavy with concern. She straightened her dress, reclaiming her composure, and walked back into the gala, feeling Ethan's gaze follow her. The dance had been a moment of surrender, but it had also been a declaration that would echo through the halls of Sterling and Vance long after the music stopped. The Plaza Hotel's grand ballroom faded behind Amara Johnson as she followed Ethan Caldwell to the private elevator, her heels clicking against the polished marble. The kiss in the alcove still burned on her lips, a reckless spark that had ignited despite her better judgment. The gala's chatter and clinking glasses were a distant hum now, replaced by the soft ding of the elevator doors opening. Ethan's hand hovered at her elbow, not touching, but close enough to send a current through her skin. His blue eyes held a question she wasn't sure she could answer. He said, "Last chance to change your mind." His voice rough with restraint as they stepped into the elevator. The mirrored walls reflected them, her in her simple black dress, him in his tailored tuxedo, the contrast stark yet fitting. His presence filled the small space, not with the CEO's authority, but with a quiet intensity that made her heart race. Amara's fingers tightened around her clutch, her mind warring with her body. She thought of the whispers at the gala, Marcus's warning glance, and the precarious balance of her career at Sterling and Vance. She'd spent years building walls against rejection, against failure, against the fear of being someone's mistake. Ethan was her boss, a man whose world was leagues above hers, and this moment could unravel everything. Yet his steady and unguarded gaze made her want to believe in something more than caution. She said, "I don't want to change my mind," the words slipping out before she could second-guess them. Her voice was soft but certain, a choice made not from impulse, but from a longing she'd buried too long. Ethan's expression softened, relief and desire flickering across his face. The elevator doors opened to his penthouse, a world of dark wood and leather, with floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing Manhattan's snow-dusted skyline. The city sprawled below like a canvas of light and shadow, but Amara focused on Ethan, his loosened tie, the faint scar above his eyebrow, the way he stood close, yet gave her space to choose. He led her to the living area, where a low fire crackled in a sleek fireplace. "Drink?" he offered, gesturing to a bar cart gleaming with crystal decanters. She shook her head, setting her clutch on a side table. "I'm good," she said, her voice steadier now. "I just need to know what this is." Ethan paused, his hand lingering on a decanter. "It's us, Amara. Not the office, not the titles, just you and me, figuring out what's real." His words hit like a key turning in a lock. She'd spent her life guarding against vulnerability, convinced no one would stay when things got hard. But Ethan's confession about his brother's death, shared in his suite 2 weeks ago, had cracked something open in her, a recognition that he too carried scars. She stepped closer, her dress brushing against his legs, and reached for his hand. His fingers were warm, steady, grounding her in the moment. "Ethan," she said, testing his name and feeling its weight. "This could ruin everything." "It could," he agreed, his thumb tracing the back of her hand. "Or it could be everything." The air between them thickened, charged with unspoken promises. Amara's heart pounded, but it wasn't fear. It was the thrill of choosing to trust, to let go. She leaned up, her lips meeting his in a kiss that was softer than the alcove's, but no less urgent. His hands found her waist, pulling her closer, and she melted into him, the world narrowing to the warmth of his touch, the cedar scent of his cologne. They moved together, a slow dance without music, toward the bedroom. The city lights filtered through the windows, casting soft shadows across the king-sized bed. Ethan's hands were gentle as he unzipped her dress, his fingers brushing her skin with reverence. Amara's breath hitched, not from nerves, but from the intensity of being seen, truly seen, for the first time in years. She unknotted his tie, her fingers steady despite the fire in her veins, and they fell into each other, passion tempered by tenderness. It was a night of surrender to desire and the possibility of something more profound. Ethan held her like she was precious, his touches careful yet consuming, as if memorizing every curve of her body. Amara felt wanted, not as an analyst or a survivor, but as a woman who could choose to be vulnerable without losing herself. 8 weeks later, Amara sat on the cold tile of her Hell's Kitchen studio, staring at 4 pregnancy tests lined up on the bathroom counter. Each showed 2 pink lines, unmistakable and undeniable. Her hands trembled as she clutched the last one, her mind reeling. They'd been careful, condoms, precautions. But one night of letting her walls down had changed everything. The tiny apartment, with its thrift store furniture and IKEA shelves, felt too small to contain the weight of this truth. Pregnant. The word echoed like a drum, both a miracle and a complication. She closed her eyes, remembering Ethan's touch, the way he'd whispered her name like a vow. That night had been a choice, a leap into the unknown. But this was a consequence she hadn't planned for. Her phone buzzed on the counter, a text from Ethan. "Missing you in the Morrison meeting. Dinner tonight?" She stared at the screen, her thumb hovering over the reply button. The life growing inside her tied them together in ways neither had anticipated. And the weight of it, career, reputation, trust, pressed against her chest. Amara set the phone down, her reflection in the mirror showing a woman caught between fear and possibility, wondering how to tell the man who'd changed her world that it was about to change again. Amara Johnson sat at her desk in Sterling and Vance's open-plan office, the hum of keyboards and muted phone calls filling the air. Her computer screen glowed with the Henderson Industries analysis, its numbers a lifeline to the professional identity she'd fought to carve out. But the weight of the pregnancy tests, 4 positive results tucked in her bathroom drawer, pressed against her focus. 2 weeks had passed since that night in Ethan Caldwell's penthouse, and the secret growing inside her felt like a ticking clock. She adjusted her navy blazer, her fingers brushing the still flat curve of her stomach, and tried to ignore the fatigue pulling at her edges. The office buzzed with the usual Monday morning chaos. Analysts poring over spreadsheets, partners barking orders through glass-walled conference rooms. But Amara noticed the sidelong glances from colleagues and the hushed conversations that stopped when she approached. Her recent doctor's appointments, excused as personal errands, hadn't gone unnoticed, and neither had her late-night assignments, nor the Henderson report that had earned her a nod from Elena Sterling herself. In a firm where standout performance often bred resentment, Amara felt the spotlight's heat. Marcus Reed, a senior analyst, leaned against her cubicle partition, his coffee mug steaming. His dark eyes, sharp with concern, scanned her face. "You okay, Amara? You've been looking off." She forced a smile, minimizing her screen. "Just tired. The Henderson project's been intense." Marcus nodded, but his expression didn't soften. "People are talking," he said, lowering his voice, "about your assignments, the late nights, and the gala. They're wondering if you're getting special treatment. Amara's stomach tightened. She'd heard the whispers. Colleagues questioning how a junior analyst landed high-profile projects, speculating about her dance with Ethan at the gala. In a firm with few faces like hers, every achievement came with a shadow of doubt. "I earned those assignments," she said, her tone sharper than intended. "The numbers don't lie." "I know," Marcus said, raising a hand. "I've seen your work. But perception matters here. You're good, Amara, but people see what they want to see. And after that dance..." He trailed off, glancing toward the conference room where Ethan was briefing the senior team. Amara followed his gaze, catching Ethan's silhouette through the glass. His tailored suit and easy confidence commanded the room, but she remembered the vulnerability in his eyes that night in his suite, the way he'd shared his brother's loss. Now, she carried a secret that tied them together, one that could amplify the gossip into a full-blown scandal. "I can handle it," she said, more to herself than Marcus. He sighed, setting his mug down. "Just watch your back. This place eats ambition for breakfast, especially from someone like us." The weight of his words lingered as he walked away. Amara opened her email and found a new message from Elena Sterling. "Great work on Henderson. Let's discuss next steps tomorrow." Pride surged, but it was tempered by the memory of the gala's whispers, the eyes tracking her every move with Ethan. She'd fought too hard to let rumors derail her, but the pregnancy complicated everything. How long could she hide it? How would it change the way the firm saw her? Her phone buzzed, a text from Ethan. "Need you in the Morrison Review at 3. Your insights are key." She hesitated, her thumb hovering over the reply. Avoiding him had become her strategy since the penthouse, and her arrivals and departures were timed to minimize chance encounters. However, work demanded collaboration, and Ethan's trust in her skills was both a lifeline and a risk. She typed a quick, "I'll be there," and hit send, her heart sinking. At 3 p.m., Amara slipped into the conference room, choosing a seat in the middle, surrounded by colleagues to blend in. Ethan stood at the head, his voice steady as he outlined the Morrison account's challenges. His eyes found hers briefly, a flicker of warmth that quickened her pulse. She focused on her notes, precisely presenting her analysis of the client's market risks. The room nodded, impressed, but she caught a junior analyst's smirk, a whispered comment to a neighbor. The air felt thick with judgment. After the meeting, as colleagues filed out, Ethan's voice stopped her. "Amara, a word." She clutched her tablet, her shield against the inevitable. The room emptied, leaving them with the scent of coffee and the weight of unspoken truths. Ethan leaned against the table, his expression softer than his CEO persona allowed in public. "You've been avoiding me," he said, direct but not accusing. "I've been busy," she replied, her voice careful. "The Morrison account, Henderson, it's a lot." He stepped closer, his cedar cologne stirring memories of their night together. "It's more than that. You're pulling away. Talk to me." Amara's throat tightened. The pregnancy was a secret she wasn't ready to share, not when gossip already threatened her credibility. She said, "I'm trying to keep things professional," meeting his gaze. The gala. People noticed. "They're talking, Ethan. About us. About me. I can't afford to be seen as anything less than competent." His jaw tightened, a flash of frustration crossing his face. "You're one of the best analysts here. No one can take that from you." "They can if they think I'm only here because of you," she shot back, her voice low but fierce. "Every move I make is watched, judged. I've worked too hard to let rumors ruin it." Ethan's expression softened, and he reached for her hand, stopping short when she flinched. "I'll keep my distance at work," he promised. "No more dances, no more late-night meetings unless it's critical. But Amara, what happened between us? It's real. I'm not letting you face this place alone. She wanted to believe him, to lean into the strength he offered. But the weight of the pregnancy, the whispers, and the fragile balance of her career held her back. "Thank you," she said, stepping toward the door. "But I need to handle this my way." As she left, the office's hum resumed, but the whispers followed, reminding her that her secret and connection to Ethan could unravel everything she'd built. Amara Johnson stood in the narrow kitchen of her Hell's Kitchen studio, the kettle's whistle piercing the quiet. Her hands trembled as she poured water into a chipped mug, the teabag string dangling like a lifeline she couldn't grasp. The 4 positive pregnancy tests, wrapped in tissue and hidden in her bathroom drawer, weighed on her mind, each pink line a reminder of the night she'd surrendered to Ethan Caldwell. 3 weeks had passed since that moment in his penthouse, and the secret growing inside her felt like a storm waiting to break. Her navy sweater and jeans, chosen for comfort, couldn't shield her from the chaos of her thoughts. The apartment, a patchwork of thrift store finds and IKEA shelves, was her sanctuary. But tonight it felt too small, too temporary. Her phone buzzed on the counter, Ethan's name lighting up the screen. "Can I come over? Need to see you." Amara's thumb hovered, her heart racing. She'd avoided him since the Morrison meeting, dodging his texts and timing her office hours to miss his. But the pregnancy changed everything, and she couldn't hide forever. She typed, "Okay, 8 p.m., and hit send, her stomach knotting with dread and anticipation. At 8:03, the buzzer sounded, sharp and insistent. Amara smoothed her hair, and her reflection in the hallway mirror showed a woman caught between resolve and fear. She opened the door to find Ethan, his charcoal suit slightly rumpled, his blue eyes searching hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. He stepped inside, his presence overwhelming the modest space, his cedar cologne stirring memories of their night together. "You've been distant," he said, his voice gentle but direct. He set his coat on her second-hand couch, his gaze never leaving her. "What's going on, Amara?" She crossed her arms, using the coffee table as a barrier. The words stuck in her throat, heavy with the weight of what they'd mean. "Sit down," she said, nodding to the couch. He complied, his posture tense, as if bracing for bad news. Amara paced, her socks silent on the worn rug. "I don't know how to say this," she began, her voice trembling. "I'm pregnant." The air in the room shifted, thick with shock. Ethan went still, his hands resting on his knees, his expression unreadable. "Pregnant." He repeated the word softly, but heavily. "Are you sure?" She nodded, pointing to the bathroom. 4 tests, all positive. He exhaled, running a hand through his dark hair. "Okay," he said, his voice steadying. "Okay. How do you feel about this?" The question surprised her, cutting through her fear. She'd expected demands, denial, anything but this quiet concern for her. "Terrified," she admitted, sinking into the armchair across from him. "I can barely keep up with work." The whispers. "With us. A baby wasn't part of the plan." Ethan leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. "You're not alone in this, Amara. I'm here for whatever you need. Medical care, time off, anything." Her chest tightened, a mix of gratitude and suspicion. "Are you? Or are you just managing a problem? I've seen how you handle crises at the firm, Ethan. Am I one now?" Pain flashed across his face. "You're not a problem. You're—" He paused, searching for words. "You're the first person in years who's made me feel something real. But I won't lie, I'm scared too. After my brother died, I learned to control everything, to avoid loss. This, he gestured between them, toward her stomach. This is new territory. Amara's eyes stung, his vulnerability echoing her own. She wanted to believe him, to trust the man who'd held her like she was precious. But years of being let down by her father and a world that judged her ambition made trust fragile. "I don't want to be managed," she said. "I need a partner, not a CEO, to fix my life." He stood, crossing the small space to kneel before her, his hands hovering near hers. "Then let me be that. I'll cover medical costs and establish a trust for the baby, but only if you agree. This isn't about control. It's about ensuring you're both safe." Her breath caught at both words, the reality of their child sinking in. She studied his face, the scar above his eyebrow, the earnestness in his eyes. "I need time," she said. "This changes everything. Work, us, my future." "I know," he said, his voice soft. "Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere." Her phone buzzed, shattering the moment. A text from Victor Vance, co-founder of Sterling & Vance. "We need to discuss your recent assignments. Tomorrow, 9 a.m. Amara's stomach sank. Victor's reputation as a traditionalist, skeptical of new talent, was well known. Had he heard the whispers? Did he suspect something about her and Ethan? "Trouble?" Ethan asked, noticing her expression. "Maybe," she said, setting the phone down. "Victor wants a meeting. I think he's watching me." Ethan's jaw tightened, a flicker of protectiveness crossing his face. "If he's a problem, I'll handle it." "No," she said firmly. "I need to fight my battles, Ethan, for now." He nodded, respecting her boundary, but his eyes held a storm of worry. As he left, promising to check in tomorrow, Amara stood alone in her apartment, her hand resting on her stomach. The life inside her was a bridge to Ethan, and a weight pulling her between her career and a future she hadn't dared to imagine. The whispers at work, Victor's summons, and the secret she carried all converged, threatening to unravel the life she'd built. Yet, for the first time, she felt a flicker of hope that she wouldn't face it alone. The 42nd floor conference room at Sterling & Vance gleamed with polished mahogany and floor-to-ceiling windows, Manhattan's skyline a stark backdrop to the tension within. Amara Johnson sat at the table's edge, her navy blazer crisp despite the sleepless night she'd spent replaying her confession to Ethan Caldwell. The pregnancy, a secret shared only with him, felt like a fragile thread binding them, now threatened by Victor Vance's summons. The co-founder's text from last night. "We must discuss your recent assignments." Tomorrow, 9 a.m., loomed like a storm cloud. Her fingers gripped her tablet, a shield against the uncertainty of what Victor knew. Victor Vance, a silver-haired titan in a pinstripe suit, paced behind his legal team, his pale eyes cold with calculation. At 68, he'd built his fortune on ruthless precision, viewing sentiment as a weakness in the corporate battlefield. Across from Amara, Ethan sat flanked by his attorneys, his jaw tight with barely contained fury. The room crackled with the weight of an ambush. Legal documents spread across the table like weapons in a silent war. Patricia Webb, Victor's lead counsel, slid a folder toward Amara, her voice sharp as glass. "Ms. Johnson, we've compiled evidence of a troubling pattern, late-night meetings with Mr. Caldwell, preferential assignments, and a convenient pregnancy. The timeline suggests misconduct." Amara's stomach churned, the word pregnancy slicing through her. How did Victor know? She glanced at Ethan, his blue eyes blazing, but he remained silent, letting his lawyer, James Morrison, respond. "The timeline proves nothing," James said, his tone measured. Ms. Johnson's assignments were merit-based. Her Henderson analysis saved the firm millions, as her performance reviews confirm. Victor stopped pacing, fixing Amara with a predatory smile. "Ms. Johnson, did you and Mr. Caldwell have personal interactions before your condition was discovered?" Ethan leaned forward, his voice cutting through. "That's irrelevant, Victor." "Oh, but it is," Victor countered, raising a hand. "If your relationship predates the pregnancy, it suggests favoritism. If it began after, it paints a CEO exploiting a subordinate. Either way, it's a liability." Amara felt the trap closing, every answer a potential noose. Her mind flashed to the gala, the whispers, and Marcus's warning about perception. She'd fought to prove her worth at Sterling and Vance, but Victor's accusation twisted her achievements into something sordid. "My work speaks for itself," she said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "I earned every project I've been given." Patricia opened the folder, revealing printed emails between Ethan and his attorney. These communications, intercepted yesterday, discuss prenatal agreements, custody arrangements, and paternal rights protection. They suggest Mr. Caldwell views you as a risk to be managed. Amara's breath caught as she scanned the pages. Phrases like limiting financial exposure and ensuring primary custody cut like knives. She looked at Ethan, searching for the man who'd knelt before her last night, promising partnership. His face was pale, his hands clenched. "Those emails were taken out of context," he said urgently. "My lawyer was preparing for worst-case scenarios, not because I don't trust you." "Trust." Amara's voice was a whisper, but it carried the weight of betrayal. "These say you're protecting yourself from me, from our child." Victor's smile widened, sensing blood. "Ms. Johnson, I'm prepared to offer a generous settlement. $2 million, a confidentiality agreement, and a clean exit. Admit your relationship with Mr. Caldwell was inappropriate. Your promotions were unearned, and you can start fresh elsewhere." The offer hung like poison in the air. $2 million, enough to buy a home, secure her child's future, escape the whispers that followed her through the office. But it meant betraying herself, confirming the doubts she'd fought her whole life. She stood, the folder falling from her shaking hands. "You're asking me to lie about my work, about who I am." Ethan rose, his voice low but fierce. "Amara, don't. This is Victor's game, not ours." "Is it?" she snapped, turning to him. "Those emails make it look like you're playing one too." Pain flashed across Ethan's face, but Victor pressed on. "Refuse, and we will proceed with a public sexual harassment lawsuit. Your careers, reputations, and your child's future will be collateral damage." Amara's chest tightened. The room was too warm, too small. She thought of her grandmother's lessons about standing tall, of the years she'd spent proving she belonged. "I need time to think," she said, her voice firm, despite the nausea rising in her throat. "Of course," Victor said, his tone magnanimous, but his eyes calculating. "But opportunities like this don't last." She gathered her tablet and purse, avoiding Ethan's gaze as she walked to the door. She saw colleagues hurrying past through the glass walls, oblivious to the storm within. Marcus caught her eye from his cubicle, his expression heavy with concern. Amara stepped into the elevator, her reflection in the mirrored doors showing a woman caught between fight and flight. Victor's threat, Ethan's emails, and the life inside her converged. A conspiracy against her career and the fragile trust she dared to build. As the doors closed, she pressed a hand to her stomach, wondering if she could face this battle alone, or if she even had to. Amara Johnson gripped the edge of a conference table in a Chicago hotel, her knuckles tight against the polished wood. The client presentation on quarterly projections blurred before her eyes as a sharp cramp twisted through her abdomen. She'd volunteered for this 3-day trip, desperate for distance from New York's suffocating whispers and Victor Vance's ultimatum. At 16 weeks pregnant, The secret she carried felt heavier than ever, compounded by the intercepted emails that had shattered her trust in Ethan Caldwell. But now, her body demanded attention she couldn't ignore. "Excuse me," she murmured to the client, pressing a hand to her stomach as another wave of pain hit. She slipped out of the meeting room, her navy skirt and blouse clinging to her clammy skin. The mirror reflected a pale, frightened face in the bathroom, her straightened hair slightly askew. Spots of blood on her clothing sent ice through her veins, a silent alarm that something was wrong. Her hands shook as she dialed Dr. Isaiah Brooks, her obstetrician, whose number she'd saved after their first appointment. "Dr. Brooks's office. This is Maria," came the calm voice. "This is Amara Johnson," she said, her voice trembling. "I need Dr. Brooks. I'm in Chicago and I'm bleeding. Hold, please." Seconds later, Isaiah's voice cut through, urgent but steady. "Amara, where are you?" "At a client meeting," she said. "Chicago," tears pricking her eyes. "I'm scared, Isaiah." "Get to Northwestern Memorial Hospital now," he instructed. "Don't drive. Take a taxi. I'm calling ahead to ensure they're ready for you. Are you alone?" The question hit harder than the pain. Ethan was in New York, likely navigating Victor's threats. Her colleagues were still in the presentation, unaware of her absence. "Yes," she whispered, the word a confession of her isolation. "I'm catching the next flight to Chicago," Isaiah said. "You're not going through this alone." The taxi ride to the hospital was a blur of city lights and pulsing fear. By the time Amara reached the emergency room, the cramping had intensified, each wave a reminder of the life she might lose. A triage nurse rushed her to an examination room where Dr. Sarah Kim, the attending physician, greeted her with kind eyes and gentle hands. "We're going to take care of you," Dr. Kim said, preparing an ultrasound. The screen flickered with shadows, and Amara held her breath, bracing for the worst. "There's the heartbeat," Dr. Kim said softly, pointing to a steady pulse. "Strong and steady. You and the baby are okay for now." Amara's tears spilled over, relief flooding her. "Then why is this happening?" "You have a subchorionic hematoma," Dr. Kim explained. "It's bleeding between the placenta and the uterine wall. It looks worse than it is, but you need complete bed rest for at least a week, maybe 2. Your blood pressure is elevated, and stress is making it worse. You have to slow down, Ms. Johnson, or you risk losing this baby." The words landed like a blow. Amara closed her eyes, guilt washing over her. She'd pushed through long hours, Victor's threats, and her fractured trust in Ethan, ignoring her body's signals. Her phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. "How's Chicago? Miss you." She stared at it. The memory of his emails. Limiting financial exposure, primary custody, stinging anew. Reaching out to him now felt like admitting she couldn't handle this alone. Instead, she called her supervisor, Janet. "It's Amara. I'm in the hospital in Chicago with pregnancy complications. I need medical leave." "Hospital?" Janet's voice softened. "Take care of yourself. The client can wait." 3 hours later, Isaiah Brooks appeared in her hospital room, his dress shirt wrinkled from travel, his tie loosened. His warm eyes and easy smile brought a calm she hadn't felt in weeks. He settled into the chair beside her bed, reviewing her chart with a practiced eye. "How are you holding up?" he asked, his voice gentle. "Like an idiot for pushing so hard," Amara admitted, wiping her eyes. "I could handle everything. Work, Victor, the baby." "You're not an idiot," Isaiah said, leaning forward. "You're carrying an impossible load. My sister went through something similar, pregnant, working in a firm that questioned her every move. The stress nearly broke her." "You don't have to do this alone." Amara studied him, noting the quiet conviction in his words. "The baby's father. He doesn't know about this yet. Things are complicated. Isaiah nodded, his expression unjudging. Victor Vance's ultimatum, right? You mentioned it on the phone. And those emails, they hurt you. She swallowed, the memory raw. They made me feel like a liability, not a partner. I want to believe Ethan's different, but I don't know if I can trust him. Isaiah took her hand, his touch steady. You don't have to decide now. Focus on you and the baby. What do you want, Amara? Not what's safe or practical. What do you need? The question pierced her defenses. She whispered, I want to believe someone can stay when it gets hard, but I'm scared that's not Ethan. Then find out, Isaiah said softly. Let him show you who he is when it matters most. Her phone rang, Ethan's name flashing. She hesitated, then answered, her voice shaky. Ethan. Amara, thank God, he said, his voice thick with worry. Isaiah's office said you're in the hospital. I'm getting on a plane now. Just hold on. The line went dead, and Amara looked at Isaiah, his sad smile mirroring her uncertainty. He's coming, she said. I know, he replied. The question is, will you let him stay? The hospital room at Northwestern Memorial was bathed in the soft glow of Chicago's afternoon light, filtering through blinds that cast slatted shadows across Amara Johnson's bed. She lay propped against pillows, her navy sweater loose over the hospital gown, her hands resting on her stomach where the faint flutter of her baby's heartbeat offered fragile reassurance. The subchorionic hematoma, Dr. Kim had explained, was manageable with bed rest, but the weight of Victor Vance's ultimatum and the intercepted emails lingered like a bruise. Dr. Isaiah Brooks sat beside her, his tie loosened, his warm eyes steady with the calm he'd brought since arriving hours ago. Amara's phone sat silent on the bedside table. Ethan Caldwell's last call, I'm getting on a plane now, echoing in her mind. She'd confided in Isaiah about the emails, their cold language of custody arrangements, and financial exposure cutting deeper than Victor's threats. Isaiah's presence, unwavering and unjudging, had steadied her. But the question he'd posed, will you let him stay, hung unanswered, heavy with possibility and fear. The door swung open. Ethan burst in, his suit jacket crumpled from the flight, his dark hair disheveled, his blue eyes, wild with panic, locked onto Amara, then flicked to Isaiah, who held her hand in a quiet gesture of support. For a moment, the three of them existed in a charged stillness, a tableau of unspoken tensions and fragile trust. Ethan's shoulders sagged, relief warring with exhaustion as he took in Amara's pale face. You're okay, he breathed, crossing to her bedside. He stopped short, his hands hovering, as if unsure he had the right to touch her. The baby? We're both okay, Amara said softly, her voice steadier than she felt. For now. Bed rest for a week, maybe 2. Isaiah stood, his hand slipping from hers with a reluctant grace. He said, I'll give you 2 some privacy. His tone gentle, but weighted. He glanced at Ethan, a silent challenge in his eyes. Take care of her. Ethan caught his arm as he passed. Thank you, he said, his voice rough with emotion. For being here when I couldn't. Isaiah nodded, his expression softening. That's what you do for people you care about. You show up. He left, the door clicking shut, leaving Amara and Ethan in a silence thick with everything unsaid. Ethan pulled the chair closer, his hands trembling as he reached for hers. Amara, I'm so sorry you went through this alone. I should have been here. You're here now, she said, her voice quiet but searching. But Ethan, we need to talk about those emails. He closed his eyes, his jaw tightening. I know how they looked, but you have to believe me, they weren't about distrusting you. My lawyer was covering every angle, preparing for people like Victor who'd use our child against us. I was trying to protect you both. Amara studied him, the lines of worry etched into his face, the vulnerability he rarely showed. Protecting me or protecting yourself? She asked, the question sharp but not cruel. Those emails talked about limiting my access to our child, as if I'm a risk to be managed. Ethan's grip on her hands tightened, his voice raw. That was my lawyer's paranoia, not mine. After my brother died, I learned to plan for the worst, because I couldn't save him. I've spent years building walls, keeping people at arm's length. But you— He paused, his eyes meeting hers, unguarded. You make me want to tear them down. I was terrified you'd see me, this broken version of me, and walk away. Her throat tightened, his words echoing her fears of abandonment. She'd built her walls, forged in a childhood of loss and a career where every step was scrutinized. I'm scared too, she admitted. Scared that loving you means losing myself. Afraid that this baby will tie us together in ways I'm not ready for. Then we face it together, he said, his voice still wrapped in warmth. No more secret plans, no more managing you. I want to be your partner, Amara, not your boss. She searched his face, seeing the man who danced with her at the gala, and held her in his penthouse like she was precious. The emails had hurt, but his presence now, disheveled, raw, here, felt like a promise. Together, she whispered, testing the word. But it means no more hiding, Ethan, from Victor, the firm, and each other. He nodded, pressing her hand to his lips, tender and resolute. I've already started. I contacted the board this morning and alerted them to Victor's tactics. Those emails he intercepted? They're illegally obtained. The SEC's interested, and Victor's about to learn he picked the wrong fight. Amara's breath caught, a flicker of hope cutting through her fear. You fought back. For us, he said, his voice fierce. Not the version where I fix everything with money or lawyers, but the version where we build something real. You, me, and our child. The word "our" settled over her, heavy with possibility. She thought of Isaiah's question, of the life inside her, of the future she'd never dared to imagine. I want that, she said, her voice trembling but certain. But I was hoping you could show me, Ethan. Not just words, actions. I will, he promised, his forehead resting against hers. Outside, Chicago's skyline glowed gold, a city moving forward while they stood still, rebuilding trust in the quiet of a hospital room. Amara felt Isaiah's absence. His gentle support was in contrast to Ethan's intensity, but she knew this moment belonged to her and Ethan, a chance to choose each other, not out of fear, but out of courage. Amara Johnson lay in her hospital bed at Northwestern Memorial, the Chicago skyline a muted glow through the window. The sterile scent of antiseptic mingled with the faint cedar of Ethan Caldwell's cologne, lingering from his visit hours ago. Her navy sweater draped over the chair, a reminder of the life she'd left in flux back in New York. The subchorionic hematoma that had landed her here demanded bed rest. But Victor Vance's ultimatum, a $2 million settlement to admit misconduct, loomed larger than her medical chart. Ethan's promise to fight Victor had sparked hope, but Amara knew corporate battles were won with strategy, not sentiment. In New York, Ethan stood in Sterling and Vance's boardroom, the 42nd floor windows framing a city that never slept. His tailored suit was impeccable, but shadows under his blue eyes betrayed sleepless nights. The board, 7 executives in crisp suits and skeptical frowns, sat around the mahogany table, legal briefs stacked like ammunition. Victor Vance, the co-founder, leaned back in his chair, his silver hair glinting under fluorescent lights, his smile sharp as a blade. He'd built his case on intercepted emails, painting Ethan and Amara's relationship as a scandal. But Ethan had a counterattack. "Victor's evidence is inadmissible," Ethan began, his voice steady as he slid a dossier across the table. "Those emails were obtained through unauthorized access to my server, a violation of federal law. I've notified the SEC, and they're investigating his methods." Victor's smile faltered, his pale eyes narrowing. "You're deflecting, Caldwell. The issue is your inappropriate relationship with a subordinate, not my methods." Ethan's lawyer, James Morrison, interjected, his tone clipped. "The relationship began after Ms. Johnson's employment and her merit-based promotions. Your reports confirm that her Henderson analysis saved this firm $60 million. A board member, Clara Nguyen, leaned forward, her glasses glinting. "And the pregnancy? Victor claims it's leverage for favoritism." Ethan's jaw tightened, but he met her gaze. "Ms. Johnson's personal life is irrelevant to her professional record. Victor is targeting her to undermine my leadership and dodge scrutiny of his practices." Murmurs rippled through the room. Ethan opened the dossier, revealing documents detailing Victor's history, complaints from female employees about dismissive treatment, suppressed diversity initiatives, and questionable financial moves. "Victor's been burying complaints for years," Ethan said. "He's weaponizing Ms. Johnson's success to protect his agenda." Victor stood, his voice icy. "This is a witch hunt. I've built this firm, and you're tearing it down." Elena Sterling cut in, her voice firm. As co-founder, her support carried weight. "The board won't tolerate illegal tactics. We're voting to suspend you, Victor, as the investigation is pending." The room fell silent, Victor's face paling. By evening, the board had voted 5-2 to suspend him, and the SEC had launched a formal inquiry into his email interception. Victor's lawsuit collapsed, his reputation crumbling under the weight of his overreach. In Chicago, Amara received Ethan's text. "Victor's out. The board backed us. You're safe." Relief washed over her, tempered by the ache of her hospital stay. On bed rest, she worked remotely, her laptop balanced on a tray. Her latest Morrison analysis, sent to Elena, earned a reply. "Outstanding work, Amara. Take care of yourself." The praise bolstered her, a reminder that her skills, not rumors, defined her. She video-called Marcus Reed, her colleague, who distanced himself during Victor's accusations. His face appeared on the screen, sheepish. "I owe you an apology," he said, rubbing his neck. "I got spooked when Victor came after you. This place, it's tough when you're not one of their golden boys." Amara nodded, understanding his caution. "I get it, Marcus, but we've got to stick together, not pull apart." "Agreed," he said, his smile genuine. "Your work's keeping us all on our toes. Rest up, okay?" After the call, Amara contacted HR, negotiating a maternity leave plan. 8 weeks post-birth, with remote work options to maintain her role. The firm's new diversity liaison, appointed after Victor's suspension, assured her of accommodations, a small victory in a battle she'd fought alone for too long. Ethan called later, his voice warm through the phone. "Victor's done, Amara. The board's behind you, and I'm working on transparency policies to prevent this again. How are you feeling?" "Better," she said, her hand on her stomach. "The baby's okay, and I'm figuring out work. But Ethan, this doesn't erase the emails. I need to trust you'll be open with me." "I will," he promised. "No more secrets. We're in this together." Amara closed her eyes, picturing their last moment in the hospital, his forehead against hers. Victor's defeat was a win, but trust was a slower battle. She felt the baby's faint kick, a reminder of what they were building. Back in New York, Ethan stared at the city, his resolve hardened. He'd fought for Amara for love and a partnership that could withstand the corporate world's sharp edges. For the first time, he believed they could. Amara Johnson stood at the podium of the Manhattan Conference Center, her hands steady on the polished wood, her navy maternity dress accentuating the prominent curve of her belly. At 7 months pregnant, she felt the weight of her daughter's kicks, a quiet rhythm grounding her as she faced an audience of young women, mothers, and female executives. The Women's Opportunity Network, her vision brought to life with Ethan Caldwell's funding, was launching its first mentorship program. The auditorium's soft lighting and sleek design contrasted with the raw energy of the crowd, their faces a mosaic of ambition and hope. 6 months had passed since her health scare in Chicago, since Victor Vance's corporate conspiracy crumbled under Ethan's strategic counterattack. The board's suspension of Victor and the SEC's investigation had silenced the whispers that once trailed Amara through Sterling and Vance's halls. Her remote work during bed rest had earned Elena Sterling's praise, and her negotiated maternity leave, 8 weeks post-birth with remote options, secured her place at the firm. Yet today, as she adjusted the microphone, Amara felt a different kind of power, one born not from surviving, but from leading. "When I started at Sterling and Vance," she began, her voice clear and resonant, "I felt like an outsider, constantly proving I belonged. Too often, we're told that accepting help means admitting weakness. But I've learned that real strength comes from partnerships that amplify our voices, not silence them." Her eyes scanned the audience, and Ethan was found seated in the front row, his tailored suit in a quiet contrast to the warmth in his blue eyes. Beside him sat Dr. Isaiah Brooks, his tie loosened, his smile a steady anchor. Their unlikely friendship, forged through shared concern for her, was a testament to the support she championed. Isaiah, now her daughter's pediatrician and the network's medical advisor, had become a constant in her life, his presence a reminder that care could be selfless. Amara's journey to this moment hadn't been easy. The whispers at work, fueled by her rapid rise and relationship with Ethan, had tested her resilience. Marcus Reed, her colleague, had apologized for his distance during Victor's threats, admitting his fears of being sidelined in a firm rarely rewarded outsiders. Their renewed alliance had bolstered her, and his presence in the audience, clapping enthusiastically, felt like a small victory. She'd fought systemic barriers, doubts about her competence, scrutiny of her every move, and turned them into fuel for this platform. "The Women's Opportunity Network isn't just about mentorship," she continued, her hand resting on her belly, feeling a kick that steadied her. "It's about creating spaces where we can be seen, heard, and valued. We don't have to choose between ambition and family, strength and vulnerability." The audience leaned forward, some nodding, others taking notes. A young woman in the back, her notebook open, reminded Amara of herself, hungry for a chance, fighting to be enough. She thought of her grandmother's lessons in Chicago, the years of scraping by, the nights spent studying under flickering lights. Those struggles had shaped her, but this moment, standing before a crowd, building something lasting, redefined her. Ethan's gaze held hers, a silent promise of partnership. Since Chicago, he'd kept his word. No more secret plans, no more managing her like a corporate asset. He'd shared drafts of the network's funding proposal, sought her input on boardroom reforms, and sat with her through prenatal appointments, his hands steady in hers. Once fractured by those intercepted emails, their trust had been rebuilt through actions, petite, consistent, real. Isaiah's role had been different but no less vital. His support during her health crisis, his quiet understanding of her fears, had given her space to heal. When she'd asked him to join the network, he'd agreed without hesitation, his expertise shaping programs for maternal health. His sad smile in Chicago lingered in her memory, a hint of unspoken feelings he'd set aside for her happiness. Yet his presence here, cheering her on, felt like a gift. As Amara concluded her speech, the audience rose, their applause thunderous. "Together," she said, her voice ringing, "we build bridges, not walls. We create futures where no one has to fight alone." She stepped off the podium, her legs shaky, but her heart full. Ethan met her backstage, his arms circling her gently, mindful of her belly. "You were incredible," he murmured, his lips brushing her forehead. "I'm so proud of you." Isaiah joined them, his smile warm. "You're changing lives, Amara. Your daughter's lucky to have you." Amara laughed, a tear slipping free. "She's got a lot of people in her corner already." The baby kicked again, as if in agreement, and for the first time, Amara felt not just the weight of her past, but the possibility of her future, a future where she led, loved, and thrived, not despite her challenges, but because of them. Amara Johnson stood in the nursery of their Brooklyn brownstone, her fingers tracing the edge of a white crib adorned with a soft yellow blanket. The room smelled of fresh paint and possibility, its walls decorated with delicate murals of stars and moons, a gift from a local artist Amara had mentored through the Women's Opportunity Network. At 8 months pregnant, her navy maternity dress hugged the curve of her belly, where her daughter's gentle kicks were a constant reminder of the life they were building. Outside, Brooklyn's tree-lined streets hummed with summer evening energy, a far cry from Manhattan's relentless pulse. The brownstone, chosen with Ethan Caldwell after weeks of searching, was neither his sleek penthouse nor her cramped Hell's Kitchen studio. It was theirs, a home rooted in compromise and hope, close enough to the city for work, far enough to nurture the family they'd dared to imagine. Amara adjusted a mobile above the crib, its tiny stars spinning, and felt a surge of gratitude for the journey that had brought her here, from a Chicago childhood marked by loss to a stage where she'd launched a mentorship program changing lives. Ethan appeared in the doorway, his tailored shirt unbuttoned at the collar, his blue eyes softened by the nursery's glow. He'd spent the day at Sterling and Vance, finalizing transparency policies sparked by Victor Vance's ousting. The co-founders' illegal tactics had unraveled under SEC scrutiny, leaving Ethan and Amara's careers intact and their relationship stronger. "Everything ready?" he asked, crossing to her, his arms circling her from behind, careful of her belly. "Almost," Amara said, leaning into his warmth. "Just making sure our girl has a perfect start." Their daughter kicked, and Ethan's hand moved to feel it, his smile a mix of wonder and nerves. "She's got your strength already," he said, his lips brushing her temple. "I'm still terrified I'll mess this up." "You won't," Amara said, turning to face him. "We'll mess up together and figure it out. No walls, no secret plans, just us." He nodded, his expression earnest. "Together," he promised, the word a vow they'd forged through hospital rooms and boardroom battles. Since Chicago, Ethan has kept his word. Open communication, shared decisions, and a partnership that feels like love, not control. He'd sat through prenatal classes, laughed at her cravings, and supported her vision for the network, proving his commitment with actions, not just words. The doorbell chimed, and Amara smiled. "That'll be Isaiah." Dr. Isaiah Brooks, now their daughter's pediatrician, stepped into the nursery minutes later, his tie swapped for a casual sweater, his warm eyes crinkling with a grin. He carried a small gift bag, a stuffed starfish peeking out. "For the little one," he said, handing it to Amara. "Thought she'd like something from the sea." Amara laughed, placing the starfish in the crib. "She's already spoiled, thanks to you." Isaiah's role in her life had grown beyond doctor, friend, confidant, and a steady presence through her health scare and the network's launch. His quiet support, tinged with a sadness she'd never fully addressed, had anchored her, even as she chose Ethan. Their unlikely yet deep friendship was a testament to love that didn't demand possession. "Everything set for the big day?" Isaiah asked, leaning against the doorframe. "3 weeks to go," Amara said, her hand on her belly. "Nervous, but ready." Isaiah said, "You'll be a phenomenal mom," his voice soft but certain. "And this guy," he nodded at Ethan, "he's learning fast." Ethan chuckled, clapping Isaiah's shoulder. "Thanks for keeping me honest, man." The three shared a quiet moment, the nursery a cocoon of hope. Amara thought of her speech at the conference center, her words about building bridges echoing here. Her past loss, doubt, and the fight to prove herself shaped her. But this moment defined her future. The Women's Opportunity Network was thriving, mentoring women like the ones she'd once been, hungry for a chance. Sterling and Vance, reshaped by Ethan's reforms, felt less like a battlefield and more like a place she could belong. Brooklyn's lights twinkled outside, a softer version of Manhattan's glare. Amara felt her daughter move, a promise of everything they'd fought for. Ethan's hand found hers, their fingers intertwining, while Isaiah's smile held a bittersweet pride. "Ready to go home?" Ethan asked, his voice low, meant for her alone. "Home," Amara said, the word tasting like freedom. Not just the brownstone, but the life they were crafting. A family rooted in partnership, a legacy of strength for their daughter. She squeezed Ethan's hand, then Isaiah's, grateful for both men who'd shown her what love could be, one through passion, the other through presence. As they stepped into the living room, the city's hum faded, replaced by the quiet certainty of a new beginning. Amara's journey had been one of breaking walls and building bridges, and now, with her daughter's arrival nearing, she knew she'd never face it alone.